Well, let's get some things down.
I would still like to.
I got a lot of phone calls talking to me, so I'm going to I'll figure out.
Yeah, exactly. I can go behind you. They're going to do two, I think. So if you want to go in front of me.
Hey, stand
Come
right
on in. We're all one family.
There you go. Stand right in front. There you go. Somebody's been looking at something.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Spencer Kronk, Austin City Manager, and I'm here today to ask the community for input on my decision to name Brian Manley as the lead candidate for Austin Police Chief. As you know, one of the most critical responsibilities that we have in local government is to ensure that our residents are safe. I knew coming into this job that we had some important leadership positions to fill, particularly in public safety. But as I said back in February, I want to make sure that we're thoughtful, intentional, and inclusive about how we make these important decisions. I wanted some time to observe, to listen, and to speak with community leaders about their experiences and expectations for the future of public safety here in Austin. Last month, I promised that I would bring forward a plan for naming a permanent chief of police. It's time to get that process started. Over the past few weeks, I've had an opportunity to speak with a variety of community leaders. Some of them are here with me today. I also had a chance to take a closer look at some of the recent recruitments from other cities that they have done. My takeaway is that we should advance Interim Chief Brian Manley forward as the sole finalist for the position and give him an opportunity to articulate his leadership vision with the Austin community. By all accounts, Manley has performed admirably over the last 18 months, and he embodies several of the key characteristics that I'm looking for in my executive appointments: a focus on partnerships, a commitment to community involvement, and a positive view towards the future. I've been impressed with his deep knowledge of the community and the skill in which he has handled some of the most extraordinary challenges that we have had as a community over the past several months. But hiring a permanent chief should be a long-term investment, and the community should know what they're investing in. That requires a full and open dialogue about both the chief's vision and the community's expectations to determine whether he is, in fact, our next police chief. So I've asked my staff to develop a plan of action that will bring as many voices into the discussion as possible. In May, we'll have a series of interview panels with staff, executives, and community leaders. We've also partnered with KLRU to host 2 community forums on May 7th and 17th. Throughout this process, anyone in the community can, and I encourage you to, share your feedback on 3 key questions that will help us frame those discussions. I'd like to know, 1, what are the key characteristics that are most important for our next chief of police? 2, what do residents see as the immediate challenges for the next chief? And 3, what issues should the next chief be prepared to address over the next 5 years? Residents can provide their thoughts online, by email, via text, or over the phone by calling 311. We want to hear from as many voices as possible. All of your feedback will be critical as I evaluate Brian Manley for the position. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Andrew, you mentioned that Chief Manley embodies all the people, most of the characteristics that you're looking for in a permanent chief, but at the end of the day, this is still possibly going to open up to a national search. So what, if anything, could change your mind at this point?
I'm new in this job. I've been here about 9 weeks, and I have been able to hear many voices from the community, but it's really important that when I make this critical decision, that I'm hearing from even more voices. And so that's why I'm announcing today this process of engagement to say, Brian Manley is the lead candidate for the job. What are your expectations for the next chief? Are they aligned with my expectations? And if so, let's move forward with having him be the candidate. But if not, we will bring that to the national level.
When you say that he's the lead candidate, have you looked at other candidates already, other resumes?
I've not looked at resumes, but I have done my research with other communities that have recently done police chief searches. So I've called counterparts in other cities, in Dallas and Fort Worth, other jurisdictions that have recently conducted those, and seen at least the finalists that they have put forward. Those are all part of the public record, so I'm happy to provide those if you would like as well. And that was informing part of my decision.
Why name a sole finalist before taking public input?
Part of it is timing. I think it's important that we move forward in one of the ways in which we can decide our next chief. I could decide to move forward as a national search today, or I could do it after this engagement period. After hearing the feedback from the community, it was overwhelmingly, let's vet who we have now, and if we need to go to a national search, let's do it then.
How long do you anticipate the community engagement and input process to
Yeah.
last?
I'm anticipating about a month, and so I'm kind of giving the community and set the expectations that through this month of May, I really want to have that heavy engagement. And again, we have these forums set up, the panel interviews, but if there are other ways that you would like to engage in this, I would welcome that opportunity too.
The police chief puts out a monthly report of crime statistics every month throughout the year. We know that violent crime has been steadily increasing. Just talk about where that is on the priority list for naming this the next permanent police chief for Austin.
One thing that's important for me is to have those comments and expectations raised by the community so that we can have a conversation about it. I think it's critical for the chief to be able to address how they might be able to solve those, or at least move the needle on some of those challenges that we face as a community. And this period of engagement will allow that opportunity to happen.
What feedback, if any, did you get from the community or other city leaders as far as Andy's leadership during the Austin politics series?
One thing that I heard over and over again is that he provided a steady and calming presence that allowed us to both feel safe, but ensure that we were able to address some of the challenges that we were facing together. So he was very available. He was answering questions and with the best information that he knew at the time. When he made mistakes, he was able to admit that he made those mistakes. And I think that's what Austinites appreciate about their leaders. They want someone who is authentic, who is approachable, who is able to engage with a variety of stakeholders within the community, and those characteristics were embodied during the time of the bombings.
Manly's been interim for 17, 18 months now. Talk about some of the things that having an interim leader you're not really able to accomplish when you do have a permanent leader, like adding a chief of staff and working on that contract with the city. What are some of the first things that the new chief will be tasked with when that person is named?
That's a great point. And if you look at the example from my own position, there was an interim for around the same amount of time, a year and a half. And there were decisions that the interim could not make because they were not filling that role permanently. So whether they're staffing decisions, more strategic decisions around what the future of the department could take on, what policy direction they would be tackling, those are all critical in thinking through the difference between holding that role as an interim versus the permanent candidate. I encourage the community to provide that type of feedback on what their expectations are for the next chief. If those are in line with what Manly would be putting forward as his vision, then I think there's a lot of alignment there. But if they're not, then we need to go for a national search. One more question.
There was a lot of criticism of how Manly and the police department handled the first bombing, the killing of Anthony Stefan House, and how it was categorized potentially as Stefan having a role in an open death, and how it wasn't taken as seriously at first. How do you consider that criticism in making this decision?
One thing that I saw through that was these are tough jobs, and there is going to be criticism in many of the decisions that are made. But how Manly was able to learn from the mistakes that he admitted and pivoted to how can we now move forward as a community in a different way. But it's that type of acknowledgement of we are fallible as leaders. And I think that we need to make sure that we are able to admit when we have challenges to that type of response to the community. And so I appreciated that characteristic that Manly showed during that time. I'll open it up if there are questions for some of the community members here. I would also invite you to have those conversations out in the hallway, but it might get a little crowded. With that, thank you very much for your time today.
So you're always good.